The thoughts, opinions, and general overall shades thrown on High at 9 News are those of the individual speakers and not those of High at 9 News, its audience, or its advertisers. The statements made do not constitute medical, legal, or financial advice, and for advice tailored to your specific situation, please consult with a licensed professional. Welcome to the High at 9 News Hour, where you will hear from cannabis industry experts and professionals from around the country talk about important topics while shining light on global issues and discussing cannabis as it relates to politics, regulation and reform, data and technology, science, research and medicine, family and parenting, art, celebrities and entertainment, fitness, sports, mental health and wellness, and plant-based medicines and entheogenics. Together, we are building a stronger community, fighting the stigma and creating change. With your host, Jason Beck, joined by special industry expert correspondents from around the country, and daily antics brought to you by Cannabis. Coming to you live every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time and high noon on the East Coast. And thank you all for getting high at 9 with us. Yes. Good morning, everybody. That's right. It is Thursday, July 24th, and today is a National Thermal Engineer Day today, you guys. Not thermal underwear, you guys. Thermal Engineer Day, okay?
Okay.
You guys are
interesting. Jason, do you read these off every day? And
every day. So
have the other engineers gotten their day? Civil engineers,
you have to
electrical,
watch,
mechanical, and
you have to watch every day, Nate, if you want to know the answer to that question.
I'm just hoping and praying those guys get their recognition.
And it's also what? Go ahead, Jenny.
No, I was just saying their union should do a better job of lobbying.
Oh yeah, that part too. It's you know who else has been doing some lobbying, because it's National Refreshment Day for all those thirsty ones out there.
That like getting cane sugar in our Coke again?
Oh, stop it, Dale. We are getting cane sugar thanks to RFK. It's going to be great. It's now American Cokes are going to be USA Cokes.
The liquor store next door literally has sold that for years.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, just imagine the power of being in the know, right?
Yeah, that's why I go to the liquor store next door.
It's also National
not Lucy's.
It's also National Amelia Earhart Day today.
Earhart.
Yeah, Earhart. Yeah, there we go. Thank you, Jenny Beth.
Yeah.
Oh man, you're gonna love this. I can't believe these guys have enough money for a lobby, because it's National Intern Day.
All that money they saved on paying them.
Yeah.
Oh man, and it's Jenny, it's your favorite. It's National Tequila Day today.
No, do you want me to tell everybody about themselves and all these evil thoughts that I hold in my head? Don't forget tequila.
Man, thank you all for joining us and getting high at 9 with us. It's also high noon on the East Coast. And please remember to like, share, and subscribe to us on all social media platforms. You can look up above and down below to see exactly where we live on the internet. And we are live every Monday through Friday on YouTube, Rumble, Twitch, X, Instagram, Facebook, Kick, as well as on our very own website at www.highat9news.com. So welcome to everyone joining us from any one of those platforms. And we are kicking off with Miss Jenny Beth Dills. She's the founder of Kind Cannabis and of Justice Served, a 501c3 that helps justice-impaired individuals get their life back on track when they have been victims of the track. That's right, it is none other than Miss Jenny Beth Dills.
Okay. Oh, okay. So, this article, I'm going to give you my summary of it. It's actually a pretty cool conversation if you want to read it, between about a study led by Dr. Stacy Gruber, who is the director of Cognitive and Clinical Neuroimaging Core at McLean Hospital. So she found that individuals who begin using cannabis during adolescence or early adulthood show significantly lower brain coherence and face measurable cognitive challenges later in life. Brain coherence refers to how well different regions of the brain communicate with each other. In Gruber's study, early cannabis users demonstrated reduced connectivity, particularly in areas related to executive function, memory, and attention. These impairments were observed even after individuals had abstained from cannabis use. The research compared early onset users to those who began using cannabis later in life and to non-users. The later start group showed fewer signs of impairment, suggesting that the age of initiation plays a critical role in long-term cognitive outcomes. Dr. Gruber emphasized that while cannabis may be perceived as relatively benign, especially as legalization expands, early and frequent use can have lasting impacts on brain development, particularly during the critical years of adolescence when the brain is still maturing. The findings contribute to a growing body of evidence warning against underestimating the risk of early cannabis consumption, especially as access becomes more widespread. So, the moral of the story, kids, you guys' brains are not fully developed yet. Don't start fucking them up before they have a chance to develop fully. Also, kids should only be using cannabis if it is for medical purposes. I am definitely a proponent of using that in pediatric medicine, especially for children with severe epilepsy and cases like that. But it's probably not a good idea, kiddos, to go smoke every day because, one, you're already kind of dumb. Give yourself a chance. You guys.
Kind of dumb.
You're saying you're calling people's kids dumb, huh?
Not mine, but I mean, maybe some people's.
Mine were. They were fucking stupid.
Like Honey Boo Boo.
Yeah. They also stole my weed. So we had to deal with that.
That means they had some smarts, Dale. They knew where to find the good stuff already.
They're not dumb, but Heather's mantra is if you're going to smoke weed, don't start too early. And carefully monitor, as Jenny said. If you're going to be taking this for medical purposes, you should not just be smoking weed like a crazy person. You should involve the medical community. And I'd like to see the long-term studies of more people, see if they can really determine how much the interconnectivity, because that from like 13 to 25, the last era where your brain is maturing, frontal lobes and the prefrontal cortex are really being pruned and fine-tuned. That's been an area of concern because if you start smoking at 21, you don't finish till you're 25 with this last brain maturity. And I think it'd be good for us to study from a personal and public health standpoint the effects of this, honestly. Not scare tactics, but let's be honest about this.
Right.
With this, I think it's really important to make the clear distinction of smoking cannabis versus like you mentioned, Jenny Beth, about supporting children that are taking it for anti-seizure, epilepsy treatments and whatnot, because those methods are not via smoking. Those are generally a tincture or some type of capsule or whatnot that's been pre-formulated to help with their condition, and so that will metabolize and whatnot with the body much differently than with actual smoking. And so I just the
problem is THC, and it makes no difference how you administer it in the body. The problem is THC.
I don't know if that's true.
Jason's right about it being different due to a metabolite, but one could also make the argument that both THC and the metabolite are both inappropriate for children. But there are different administrations given to children medically, therapeutically, in the directions that have been suggested would be a little bit more agreeable here. And those will differ based on the route of administration that's given. Go on. Sorry to cut you off, Jenny.
Oh, no, I was cutting you off. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I didn't know where it was stopping. I'm sorry. Very, very valid point, Nate. Let's break it down into layman's terms for, Jason and everybody else. It's kind of like the law of diminishing returns, right? Like if my child has zero quality of life without the use of cannabinoids, the chances are my child may not be that highly functioning, right? So the risk of maybe we're going to impede some of that frontal lobe development as opposed to my child is able to play outside and not have 60 seizures a day is well worth those small, things that we're going to see. Now, if my child is a perfectly normal child, healthy child, I have a 12-year-old son, right? Like these are very real things. Now, fortunately, his mom has worked in weed since before he was even thought of. But that's not that cool to him. Now, do I want him going out and smoking every day? No, because come on, little buddy, we're already trying to get past, we're trying to figure out what your hormones are doing to you that makes me want to just shake you a little bit sometimes. Let's go ahead and give you a chance to develop properly. At the end of the day, none of these substances that are psychoactive, I don't care if it's alcohol, I don't care if it's cannabis, I don't care what it is, outside of medical necessity, which there is none for alcohol, I don't think, dude, just keep it out of the way of the kids, period. Point blank.
I think there is a medical necessity for alcohol in the case of halitosis.
What?
Yeah, because scope, Listerine, that's all made with alcohol.
Jesus,
You don't drink it, dude.
Lord help me, I don't got time. It's too early. Jesus,
to
take this
Jenny's
burden
point-
from me. Jason, why do you do this? Why?
I can't help myself.
To Jenny's point, when you're making a diagnosis and working on a treatment plan, you look at the risk-benefit analysis and you give the parents the options. And when you're dealing with something like seizures, the options are phenytoin or Dilantin. That shit is really toxic, okay?
Yeah, Dilantin is a
If
scary
you're
thing.
stopping somebody from having seizures, and the parents take the risk-benefit analysis and go, okay, I think the risk is worth it. And these are discussions that need to be taking place in the home and probably in schools when you talk about public health. Honestly discuss risk and benefits of these different substances. You know, are out there. Don't pretend like kids can't get their hands on weed and pills and alcohol, stuff like that. But to try and do games and, you know, try to shame them and scare them, it doesn't work. Got to have more honest discussions with your kids. And hopefully they don't really fall into the traps of addiction because that's where you really start having problems that you really can't back out of very easily.
You know, I was overdosed on Dilantin, Dale, and you know, and I finally went to the doctor and told him I was having X, Y, and Z side effect and whatnot. And they tested the levels of my blood, and they were supposed to be in between 10 and 20, and they were like way over 30. And I was like asking, how did this happen? They're like, oh, well, you know, it's kind of like we just have to experiment with everybody and da. And I'm just like, that doesn't sound like any type of science to me. That sounds like I'm a guinea pig in your laboratory. And I was very, very disappointed with medical practice at that point in time.
Welcome to Western medicine, bro.
Yeah.
That's the chat that's saying this industry is full of hypocrites. Many successful people in the industry started young, and that is true. But I've also done a lot of other things that I would not suggest replicating. So, you know, hey, I guess I'm a hypocrite, but yeah, do as I say, not as I do. We also sprayed 20 happily and before we knew better. So.
Yeah.
I've worked with a handful of families in the lab world who have gone through that journey of, you know, administering cannabis to their kids. I have a little bit of perspectives on it, but one of the things I can tell you is that everybody who I've ever run into, they're on last resort kind of status. They have tried everything, you know, ad nauseum for years. And nothing works, and this one weird ultra, you know, it's seemingly ultra natural treatment that keeps coming up. Cannabis and CBD keeps popping up until the point where their kid hits that, you know, final level of, because a lot of these kids like that I've worked with, I mean, if you go back to that weed documentary from Gupta all those years ago that was surrounding Dravet syndrome, you know, a type of seizure conditions where people have these grand mal seizures, these shattering seizures that will ultimately kill them before they ever hit teen years, let alone adulthood. And this is the condition, and watching your kid basically right on the rim of, you might not have your kid for much longer if you don't do something about it soon. And I've run into that side of things. Not to say that that is a perfect reflection of everybody who's ever, you know, thought about their kids and cannabis. But I do have some perspective on this stuff, and it's really interesting to see because even those who approach this seriously, it's still a massive struggle. Example, if the first thing that comes to mind is children with epilepsy, the grand majority of them have a CBD level treatment. But because CBD, especially here in like California, isn't very celebrated anymore, it's not seen as something that, you know, has those dollar signs around it. Really, you're just playing this, you know, big dick contest of high THC numbers if you're a brand, oftentimes, not everybody, but it happens way too often. And you see it everywhere where you see people pushing numbers and trying to actually get, you know, this particular flavor out instead of getting a particular treatment out. And where it's left a lot of these families who've relied on these CBD operations is treatment is fewer and further between. I've even, gotten calls in the last couple months of saying, Nate, do you know where to go now? We are really running out of options. And everybody who was growing for us is not growing anymore. Everybody just dropped out one by one. And so now we have, I know it's a little bit of a extreme in the other direction, but we have these families and these children who absolutely need this kind of stuff to stop them from these shattering seizures, and that going away based on just the fucked up business environment of our industry.
Mm-hmm. You have any thoughts on this, AJ?
Well, as fate would have it, I was actually, I worked as an electroencephalographer for 10 years when I was younger. I even worked in a children's hospital. My job was to induce seizures and then make a record of them in order to determine where in the brain the seizures were happening.
What a jacked up job.
So what I can say is that there's a lot of nuance to treating seizure disorders, because doctors will prescribe a cocktail of chemicals, and it's basically shooting in the dark, trying to figure out what works, and what works now might not work as the kids grow and their brain chemistry changes. So it's always like it's a moving target trying to treat seizure disorders in kids. I don't have any experience with giving kids weed or CBD, but I know that there's a lot of nuance to treating these disorders, and I can say that a lot of these kids would be like heavily narked out on serious narcotics. So I mean, I'd say that it's definitely always worth a try to use a natural medicine, but that it's a complex issue, because it tends to be an experimental cocktail. Each kid would be on a different
regimen. Yeah.
Because what's working now might not work later, and what's working for one kid will not work for another.
Yeah. No, I had a grand mal seizure, and then that's when they put me on the Dilantin, and exactly like what you said, it was like they're just like shooting in the dark. They're like, oh, we just got to figure it out as we go along, and da 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 da. And I had some like crazy side effects from it. That is just it was horrific, terrible time.
Well, they don't understand the brain. That's the problem. And when you're having paroxysms, which are what causes seizures, they just try to sedate the shit out of your brain to stop it. And over time, they have basically tethered out some different approaches. And I'm sorry that you got the sledgehammer, Jason, but Molly and I have been involved in treating people with cannabis. It's very frustrating because there aren't any pharmaceutical available molecules they really put together with like Dilantin and other types of chemicals. See how they work. That needs to move forward. I'm not advocating that we reschedule this thing, but I think at some point cannabinoids will be singly used, like put into a compound as a start. Here's where we're going to start with some kid having seizures, and it may include THC, it may include some CBD, and it may include some Dilantin and some other known chemicals, and then start playing around with that. But you're looking at something where the brain is encased in something that you can't just look at. You can't open it up and take a look at shit. So they're around the edges trying to figure this out, doing EEGs to see where it might be located and see if they can find a way to tamp it down. But allopaths want every available thing they can get. The government is the one playing games with these drugs. And in the middle of it, it's called practice because nobody knows what the fuck they're actually doing. They're just playing around with it and throwing drugs at people, see if we can control it. As you said, as you mature, that may not work for the long run. And it's just difficult, especially when you're looking at parents being arrested or prescribers being harassed for doing this. When a kid's like on their last leg and you're trying to save their life. And I've been in court before with parents and prescribers who they're going after because some kid was given, some THC compound and they think, oh, this is horrible. Well, fuck you. If your kid's dying from seizures, what are you willing to do? My response is goddamn near anything. Okay, and you shouldn't be arrested for it either.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. And on that, we're going to roll into
Regardless, I think it's addressing the symptoms of a bigger problem. I mean, if you could be doing everything you can to treat seizure disorder in your child or any type of disorder, but if you're not looking at the food they're eating, and all the other things that's being put into them, then you're just chasing after the problem. You're not cutting it off at the head.
Mm-hmm. Literally at the head.
Allopathic medicine isn't taught how to do that very well.
Yeah.
They want to throw a pill at you rather than take a holistic approach and look at your nutrition, environment you're in, maybe going testing for toxins in the environment. There's so many things you could do, but insurance companies don't pay for that. So guess what? It doesn't get done.
Well, there's not a profit in a cure, Dale. There's only profit in treatment.
Well, and I understand that, but when you're a parent, you don't give a shit about profit. Trying to fix your kid. And at a bigger level, 30,000 feet, we've got insurance companies that are the tail wagging the dog, and the government's in trying to push and pull wherever they can. It's just a mess. That's why I decided I'm not going to be a physician. I'm going to be an attorney because I'm an asshole, and I tend to get really fucking pissed at these people when you're trying to do something to help somebody, and that's your Hippocratic oath. You're being told by non-physicians you can't do this, or you should do this, or we're going to punish you for doing things like that. Amelia and I did 5 years in prison trying to help really sick people get their hands on cannabinoids. And it's just disgusting the shit the government still does to tie the hands of physicians.
And on that, we got to roll into our first commercial, and we're going to be right back.
Oh man, your knees still bothering you, man?
Yeah, my left one, But I'll tell you what, I've been using this new CBD cream, and it works like a miracle.
CBDs? I done heard about them CBDs. I was out there on them Twitters the other day, and I heard they get you high as a kite.
Well, not this stuff. This stuff is tested. Every batch, all the way through, pharmaceutical grade, and in a GMP certified facility. So you're not going to have to worry about flying high.
GMP certified? I might have to try some of this out. Where do I even find this?
You go directly to aimhighhemp.com and they will ship it to your door right away. Tested. It's not a name, it's a promise.
We are back, you guys. We are back.
Coming up next, the highest Republican allegedly, the High 9 head honcho, my best friend, although you can't tell if you've seen us fight, Jason Beck.
She's ornery today, you guys. I don't know what's up her, you know what I'm saying? But whatever. She'll get over it, I guess. But let me tell you, who's not, doesn't sound like it's getting over it, you guys, because Big Alcohol prepares to fight back as a busy cannabis drinks steal sales, you guys. Top alcohol makers have been sitting on the sidelines of a cannabis beverage boom, watching brands in the fastest growing category like Can and Wink make deals with beer and booze distributors and gain valuable space on liquor store shelves. Now, some alcohol companies, seeing their sales falter, are laying the groundwork to potentially enter the lucrative but risky market. A dozen founders of cannabis brands, ingredients, suppliers, and drink manufacturers told Reuters. Drinks containing THC, the mood-altering ingredient in marijuana, and restricted to licensed dispensaries in 24 U.S. states where adult use of cannabis is legal, but small amounts of THC can also be extracted from hemp, a crop that is related to marijuana, is the same plant, but is federally legal. And beverages containing THC derived from hemp can be sold in many liquor stores, shops, and convenience stores and supermarkets around the country. And that's where Big Alcohol sees the opportunity, because despite some companies having been burned by past cannabis investments, Corona Brewer Constellation Brands has been internally researching hemp-based cannabis drinks to weigh its next steps. A source familiar with the company's thinking said. Absolute Vodka distiller Pernod Richard has met with Breeze, maker of drinks with THC derived from hemp, as recently as last month to discuss a possible investment, and Breeze founder Aaron Noshabach said in a quote, "They did not invest now, but are circling," Novich said. Pernod declined to comment on the meeting, and Constellation Brands said it does not comment on rumors and speculation. And alcohol makers are still suffering a hangover following America's pandemic drinking binge, when sales spiked as cash-flush consumers splurged on pricey bottles of liquor for their homes and then rushed back to bars when lockdown restrictions lifted. Well, that's because they were getting all that PPE money. And alcohol sales have been falling ever since its inflation and interest rates rose and wallets became stretched. The companies also now face growing warnings from public health authorities who say drinking even small amounts of alcohol is associated with at least 7 types of cancer. And overall, U.S. beer volumes fell nearly 6% through May of this year, according to the Beer Institute, and volumes of spirits and wine sold in the same time period have declined by 5.6% and 9% respectively, according to the Wine and Spirits Wholesalers of America. In a sign of turmoil in the industry, the CEO of the world's biggest alcohol maker, Diageo, stepped down last week as the company struggles to revive growth. But hemp-based drinks are expanding fast, and the maker for drinks infused with THC from hemp is projected to top $1 billion in sales this year, according to market research from Euromonitor, and climb past $4 billion in 2028. Molson Coors CEO Gavin Hartsley told Reuters in January that he'd be naive to say THC beverages aren't having an effect, at least in a small way. And Tilray Brands, the 4th largest U.S. craft brewer with brands including Montauk and Shock Top, is selling its new hemp-derived THC seltzers through its beer distributors, such as United Distributors in Georgia, executives told Reuters in an interview. The company's THC drinks are for sale in 13 states. In a quote, they say, "There's not a real leader that's taken a hold of the market so far, and that's what we look to do," Tilray CEO Irwin Simon told Reuters earlier this year. Others, including Heineken, Lagunitas brand, and Pabst Blue Ribbon, the 5th largest U.S. brewer, have lent their names to THC seltzers for sale in dispensaries in California, and Lagunitas is looking to grow distribution of its THC seltzer, potentially using hemp to other states. And a representative from CannaCraft, its ingredient supplier, said. A spokesperson from Lagunitas said it has no immediate plans to expand, but monitors market development and looks for opportunities as consumers' tastes and regulations change. Boston Beer, the maker of Sam Adams, is one of the brewers with the clearest path to eventually enter the U.S. cannabis drinks market, although it has not provided a time frame for doing so. The company is already selling its Teapot brand of THC-infused tea in Canada, where weed is legal, and in the last year tested a potential U.S. version made from THC derived from hemp. To test the reformulated product, a panel of trained sensory experts sampled Teapot with both THC from hemp and marijuana and could not taste a difference, said the company's head of cannabis, Paul Weaver. In a quote, they say, "This is a source of growth for our organization, flat out," Weaver said. But there's cautious moves because big alcohol is treading carefully in cannabis drinks because state and federal regulations have shifted and could change again, said 5 executives at ingredient supplies and THC beverage brands. And California, which has had legal weed, has banned hemp-based drinks last year to try to prevent children from consuming them. Other states have introduced special taxes or restricted sales, an ambiguity that has held alcohol companies back from entering the market. Senator Marijuana Mitch McConnell, who helped first legalize hemp in 2018 to support farmers in his home state of Kentucky, in July introduced a provision in a government spending bill that could ban intoxicating products using the plant. And McConnell wrote in an op-ed published in the Louisville Courier-Journal on July 17th that his efforts are aimed at keeping THC gummies that look like familiar candies out of the hands of children, and he did not provide comment beyond the op-ed. Big brewers have been burned by past cannabis investments, and in 2022, the biggest U.S. brewer, Anheuser-Busch InBev, exited a deal with Tilray to research cannabis drinks in Canada. The same year, Molson Coors shuttered its U.S. businesses selling beverages infused with CBD, a compound in marijuana, and hemp that does not have psychoactive effects, citing an uncertain regulatory environment. Constellation Brands restructured its investment in Canadian cannabis company Canopy Growth growth last year after poor sales, and now, however, hemp-based THC drinks are sold widely. But beyond beer's declining sales, brewers face an additional squeeze from tariffs, which threaten to push up prices for imported drinks, and Hispanic consumers who are staying home due to fear of U.S. immigration enforcement. But there's high margins because liquor stores are embracing the busy beverage to boost their margins, as the drinks, typically more expensive than a six-pack of beer, start to outsell other types of alcohol. John Halper, CEO of Minnesota liquor store chain Top 10 Liquors, told Reuters in June that THC beverages now make up 15% of his business after the company introduced them 2 years ago. By next year, they could grow to rival wine, currently in the mid 20% of his sales, he said. The drinks take shelf space mostly from beer because they are in coolers, Halper said, and the margins on cannabis beverages are higher than those for beer and spirits, and helping his firm offset softening alcohol sales. In Charleston, South Carolina-based Southern Horizon Logistics, a sister company of Budweiser distributor Southern Crown Partners, is now selling more hemp-based drinks than wine and spirits, and Justin Ashby, the company's chief administrative officer, says, and Ryan Moses, the CEO of Nashville, Tennessee based beer and wine and spirits distributor Best Brands, said that growth from the THC-infused drinks has helped offset flat and declining alcohol sales instead of possible layoffs. Moses has been able to reallocate employees to the new category, and in a quote says, "It could be as big as the other categories 5 to 10 years from now," Moses said. And consumers like Josh Goldberg, 39, of Lyndhurst, New York, are also trading out beer and tequila for THC seltzers. And Goldberg made the switch almost 2 years ago and hasn't had a drink since. And he says, "It replaces the physical act of drinking with drinking something else," Goldberg said. Well, that's pretty obvious, dude. Anyways, Halper, the owner of Minnesota liquor stores, said the customers buying THC-infused drinks tend to skew female and over the age of 35. And in quotes, "The soccer mom has really embraced the category in a big way," Halper said. Well. This is, I guess, a positive story overall for the beverage space, but it's still the smallest segment of the market, and I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about this. But I think hemp beverages overall are pretty much the ones that's taking the cake.
Yeah, as usual, though, Jason, it was a PPP loan, not a PPE loan.
Whatever.
PPE is personal protection equipment.
Whatever. PPP.
I thought it was Reuters. Am I missing something here?
Yeah, Reuters.
Reuters.
Yeah.
Okay.
High five, Dale.
There's a lot of novelty in this right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that they're looking at 10 to 15 years. It's hard to know because, one of the reasons people consume alcohol because you get a rather immediate kick from it.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't take 2 hours for it to kick in very slowly. And right now, I think it's a novelty. I don't know what else to say, because if you are looking to get high and you're at a bar and you want to have a couple of drinks and pick up a lady, and it takes 2 hours for the drink to kick in, you may go for a shot of tequila.
Actually, real quick, Dale, if it is properly water solubilized, it won't go through the liver. It doesn't have that long delayed effect as the chemicals metabolize, and it is relatively immediate within a few minutes if it is correctly water solubilized. It is worth mentioning that in your long experience with cannabis, not every beverage you've ever been exposed to or that you've ever been made aware of has been properly water solubilized. So in that, one could suggest that it's another layer to this, is that unless chemically you're familiar with it and unless the formula is up to snuff, it might not even be that. But just to throw it out there, and just because some people might, get the, actually kind of isms.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, if it is water solubilized properly, it will be relatively immediate. However, kind of fun for all of those people out there who really enjoy cannabis from the natural standpoint, how much you have to render it so to speak, in order to make it truly fully water soluble is a fairly extensive process of, well, it's a lot of processing, it's a lot of rendering, and a lot of that heart and soul of cannabis, the indica versus sativa, or the one strain's nuances versus another. A lot of that complexity really gets just sucked right out of it. So another point there. I could go on and on about this sort of stuff, but always interesting to know. And I mean, beverages seem like such a simple way to go too. You know, especially if you just had the opportunity. I know we had discussions of crossfading here, but you can fit a hell of a lot of milligrams into a relatively small amount of ethanol, and you can call that a tincture. And that makes cannabis and beverages, without having to be too alcoholic, a very accessible thing. I would like to see more of it personally.
Well, there's got to be new traditions established, and I think that will come. And when you take a look at any substance that you're going to consume orally, what pharmacologists tend to do, as Nate alluded to, is they will alter the chemical so that it will take more rapid onset. It's fairly common in the drug industry. My point was that for people who have been using cannabis and are comfortable using it, you take it orally, you know it's going to take some time to kick in, and you try to figure out how to titrate that. It's natural cannabis in an orally consumed state without the things that Nate's talking about takes time. One of the features of being at a bar is you can take a shot and take it down, and within 10, 15 minutes, you know, you're up on the floor dancing and rocking and rolling or whatever it is you're trying to do. So there's delayed effects. And I have no doubt that down the road, they'll figure out new formulations for this. It's the way, you know, that research works. Somebody gets something, they market it, somebody wants to buy it. Next thing you know, they're selling the shit out of it. And then somebody finds something new. That's all going to be coming. But, you know, at those points, the margins for weed will not be what they are now. And the alcohol's complaining because their margins are low. And if you got to remanufacture something to get that immediate effect, you lose your margins. Now you got business issues and problems coming into it. You know, I'm happy to see people can take something orally like this relatively calmly and be around each other and enjoy it. I think that's a good thing. But we're seeing business and government fighting over this, and then they're hoping that consumers come to them, and, you know, let's see if they do.
I mean, Jenny Beth, you're a big beverage lover. What do you think about this?
I mean, cannabis beverage lover?
Yeah.
No.
You're not?
No.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. Look at that. Look at that. Such a switch.
How do you know you, Jenny Beth?
Such a switch. Such a switch. Such a switch.
Yeah.
I don't know, Joe. You buy into this beverage craze? I'm still not buying it.
I'm not an edibles guy. I never have been. But I've always, I don't know. I'm surprised that the whole thing has gone this far, because there's no other drug that is available in cookies and candies and cheesecake. Everything comes in a pill. And I thought that the edibles thing would eventually die out, and that would eventually just become another something that you take in a capsule, like every other drug. I'm surprised it's gone this far. I think it's a novelty to have drugs in food, and I never saw it lasting this long though. So maybe I'm wrong, but I think that eventually it would all just be a pill.
I think your perspective as far as it being a drug, I think that's kind of what's skewing your thought process on this, because it's just a herb and it's a compound from a plant, and so it's just like, you know, like any other type of ingredient that people would put into a mixture.
Sure. I mean, I just look at it as a drug once it's been processed into a concentrate or a chemical.
All right, fair enough. Dale, I see you being cynical over there.
It might be a good drug, but it's a...
You know, terms, one of the issues with the English language is that the definitions change so rapidly. Word drug comes from the Dutch word droog, which means dried plant. Okay, so when you throw the word drug out there, meaning cannabis is a dried plant. It was traditionally a drug or a drug. So was opium. I mean, these were the traditional drugs. And now we've turned them into whatever. I mean, your antihistamine's a drug. All these other things are classified as drugs. And it just gets skewed. Okay. And what I think's going on right now, honestly, is that the novelty thing. And also, people are looking for a way to make money. And if they can get people to buy this shit, hey, great.
Yeah.
Right? But then you try to justify it and predict what the future is going to be. I think you're on a foundation of sand. It just doesn't work.
Fair enough. Or maybe a dunk tank in this situation, right, Dale? All right.
I'm not a beverage fan. I like single malt scotch. That's my beverage.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And we're going to keep this train rolling. We're going to roll right into attorney at law, Mr. Dale Schafer. Dale has been an attorney since the Reagan administration. He's represented physicians, hospitals, insurance companies, cops, corrections officers, and for the last 25 years, he has specialized in cannabis law. He served a 5-year federal prison sentence for helping medical marijuana patients and managed to save his law license. He's blunt. He doesn't smoke them because they're ratchet, nasty, and they make your breath stink and make you have alcohol like scope for your halitosis. He's honest. He's unconcerned with public opinions, your opinion, everyone's opinion for that matter, and we'll show you how he can defy gravity by pissing up a rope. That's right, is your favorite T.O. Loco, and you can now find him at his own law office at the law office of none other than Dale Schafer.
Hi, good morning, everybody. It's your favorite T.O. Loco, and for my friend Jenny Beth, your favorite full of shiticus.
Yeah.
Here we go again. Jason asked me to cover this story, and it comes out of the Marijuana Moment on the 22nd. Kyle Yeager wrote this story. And the headline is New Congressional Bill Would Allow Interstate Marijuana Shipping by USPS to help small growers compete against large corporations. Now, this is called, it was just introduced into Congress, and it was introduced by 2 Democrats, one from California, a guy named Jared Huffman, another one from Oregon, Val Hoyle. I don't say I know these people, but this is not bipartisan. This is put out by the Democrats. And in this Congress, I don't want to say it has a snowball's chance of hell in passing, but it's pretty close to those odds. It's called SHIP, which means the Small and Homestead Independent Producers Act. I come up with these acronyms. Without an appropriate acronym, you ain't going nowhere.
That's right.
You make all these fucking stupid words up. And,
otherwise, you're not going to remember them, Dale.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. Like you can't pronounce Reuters. Here we go. Okay. Now, one of the purposes, and in fact, the main purpose of this is it's not going to take effect until cannabis is descheduled, not rescheduled, but descheduled. You know, the Controlled Substances Act, you take away the jurisdiction of that particular act. Now we have the potential for interstate commerce, and they're assuming that there's going to be states out there that are not going to want to do this. And that is the beauty of our Constitution. States have a whole lot of power, including the power to, inside their state, not do something. Okay? So what this is going to do is it's going to allow, and these are primarily the West Coast people who grow a lot of weed, and we've got the tradition of growing a lot of high-quality weed out here, ship it across state lines. And if you're a state that decides, I don't want to do this, it can still go across public roads, be transported to another jurisdiction where it's legal. In other words, if you start in California and you want to drive to New York with it, you go through some state that decides we don't want it, they can't stop you on the public highways as long as you're not trying to sell in that state, which I think is a good thing. Now, the way that they classify small, it kind of got my attention because it looks like it's taking a look at California's cultivation market. In California, a medium cultivator is up to an acre. So what they say, to be small, you can have outdoor up to an acre, in a greenhouse up to half an acre, which we would call mixed light or things like that, okay? And then for an indoor, it's 5,000 square feet. If you're within those categories, you would qualify to be able to send it across state lines under this act. If you're a manufacturer and you have less than $5 million in gross receipts for a year, you would qualify also. So the stated purpose of this, and this comes from the Minority Cannabis Association, NCIA, there's a bunch of other groups that are trying to push this, is to carve out a niche for our smaller cultivators here on the West Coast to be able to lawfully get our products to New York like they're doing right now in the black market. Okay. Now, I said one of my concerns is this is not bipartisan. It's put forward by Democrats only, which I think is going to be a problem in Congress because there are bipartisan groups in Congress that you probably could or should go to see if they want to do this. It's only going to work with descheduling. And so if it's not descheduled, this isn't really going to have any effect. And my view is if we do deschedule cannabis, and I don't know that you're going to need this, okay? But the feature that they really want to wave the flag about is having this to be able to be shipped lawfully through the Postal Service and private carriers. And they have to verify at the receiver end that you're 21 or older. I mean, it happens a lot right now, nefariously through these private carriers because they mask it so the dogs can't find it, stuff like that. This would just make it so that in some state where it's legal, you could go on the internet and order an ounce of OG Kush from Mendo County or something and have it delivered to your house. I like the concept of it. My concern is that if you're not bringing everybody together here, you're going to have a problem with this. And whether this is going to push Congress to now deschedule as opposed to reschedule, I don't know if this is going to provide much impetus. I like the concept, but I think the way that it's rolling out in the environment we have right now, I don't know that it has a whole lot of chances for success through Congress. I'm going to throw us back at you for your thoughts, but those are my ideas about this.
Well, Dale, I tend to agree with you. I don't think this bill has a chance of going anywhere. However, I do think that it can create a dialogue amongst members of Congress. I do agree with you that nothing is going to get passed that's strictly a Democrat bill during this Congress, and probably not even the next Congress for that matter. But there is the States Reform Act by Nancy Mace, which would deschedule cannabis and would do the same thing. And so maybe this is a way for them to kind of, find some common ground, and maybe possibly a mixture of the States Reform Act along with this SHIP Act can maybe come together, because it sounds like a lot of the same talking points are already in there in both bills.
Well, I agree, and I'm hopefully it would start a dialogue. But my view, we need more than a dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
We need a court decision to step in, and I keep pulling for Clarence Thomas to get a case where he can pull the plug on this nonsense.
That would be great.
Throw it back to the 10th Amendment. Let the states handle this thing and get the feds completely out of this goddamn thing. That would go beyond dialogue. Now we got to fix this somehow. And I don't think they're going to go back into making it Schedule 3. I think that would be helpful. Absent that, I don't know that cannabis right now, in the face of all the other things going on at the federal level, is going to get the kind of traction it needs to really get this done in Congress. I just don't see it right now.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Any thoughts on this, Jenny Beth?
It's not going anywhere. Also, by the way, the reason why people are sending weed to fucking New York illegally is because they can make money on it. So double down all those taxes, pay taxes in both districts, pay your shipping fees, and see where that profit margin goes. Then shove it up your ass and figure out how to sell your products. Or just say, hey, we've gotten to the part where I may have been squeezed out of this industry that I really wanted to be a part of. That sucks. Let me see how I can find a way to be competitive. Or maybe I lick my wounds and cut my losses.
Look at
well,
that.
And if you take a look at correlations in the alcohol industry, I mean, my family was involved in it since Prohibition was ended in the 1930s. My family got liquor licenses then. And so we've had some awareness of how this worked. And when alcohol was first legalized, small, backyard moonshiners, they just didn't survive. They didn't have the clout to come back from these heritage, distillers and refiners. to really get in the market. Now, over time they did. And I think now alcohol can be actually handled a lot like what they're saying in this bill. Okay? But it didn't happen overnight. It took decades for that to happen.
Yeah.
And they want to truncate this with cannabis and go right to where alcohol is right now. And I think alcohol and cannabis should be treated the same. I have no problem with that. But I don't know that it's going to happen overnight, that you're going to get everything you want so that you can be a craft cannabis producer in the Triangle and have a huge market in Maine or something like that, that was a delivery market. I don't know that that's really going to sustain you, because they're concerned in this bill about multi-state operators who have the deep pockets to be able to put things out there on very small or zero margins and survive until they get the market up. The small people don't.
Yeah.
And they're looking for ways for the government to fix that for them. This is an economic issue. You ain't got the bank account to do it. The people that do have the bank account are going to kick your ass in the marketplace. That's an economic reality.
That is so true, Dale. You have any thoughts on this, Nate?
I agree with everything that I've heard so far. My only, reiteration that I would put out there is, this sounds like, I agree that there's no chance of this going anywhere. If it does, color me shocked. If anything, I'm glad it's put out there. Number one, like Dale said, like you guys said, it starts a dialogue. That's a good thing. Things should be talked about. I'm a little jealous, on the other hand, because I wish it was my fucking job to start dialogues. But we take what we're doled out with, right? On that note, though, like so many other practical ideas, because that's what it is. It's practical. Should we be able to, treat this like alcohol? Should it be given ultimately the same allowances with trade as you see elsewhere? Should people around the planet get a chance to, starting here in the US, get a chance to try out this amazing California weed? Of fucking course. But like so many other practical things, it's ahead of its time. I mean, give me a number, 10 years, 20 years ahead of its time. Eventually, someday, it's neat. I guess these guys get the whole first comment kind of thing, but I don't know how much that amounts to at the end of the day.
Well, I'd say that people have been smoking cannabis, California cannabis, and getting California cannabis for over the last 80 years, easy. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And so
nature finds a way.
Yeah, it's not uncommon. It may not be legal or above board, but people have definitely been getting it.
Agreed.
Any thoughts, AJ, before we move on?
Well, Bill, nothing really makes sense in government, but if they wanted to make a bill that was logical, then they would add other agendas to it, like, for example, saving the United States Post Office by making them the official transporter. If there was another agenda that actually benefited government and saved money, it might stand a chance.
Well, we subsidize the United States Postal Service because companies like Amazon, Americans want all their packages delivered to them right at their doorstep, and out of that, that's where the U.S. postal system really takes a big chunk as far as ends up in the red year over year, is because of those types of subsidies and whatnot. So, and then they keep on raising stamps trying to fill that gap, and you know what I mean, and the small mailer just comes up short every time. And on that,
in my experience, if you ask the government to create a horse, what they give you is a fucking giraffe. Okay. And so whatever you start out with good intentions, by the time it comes out of our government with all the compromise and other horse shit, lobbying, get something that doesn't even really resemble what you were trying to do. And I think that's not going to change here anytime soon.
Fair enough. And on that, we're going to roll into our next commercial, and we're going to be right back. All right, stop whatever you're doing. Make sure you smash that like button. I know we'll appreciate it. You'll appreciate it, and YouTube will appreciate it. Also, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed already. And all of the articles that we cover on today's show, you can read directly on our website at www.highat9news.com. And make sure you go into the description of the video as well and check out all of our amazing sponsors that help make the show possible every day. And make sure that you use the link to order yourself a case of Liberal Tears energy beverage, 150 milligrams of caffeine in every can, 0 grams of sugar, and no liberals were harmed in the making of this product, but they sure as hell did cry a lot. I just ordered the summertime strawberry salad when added steak on top here at Anna's. Make sure you do the same thing too next time you're in downtown Long Beach. Come on down and check out Anna's joint on the 400 block of Pine Street. They have amazing selection of beers, foods, and when you come down here to Anna's, you can even challenge me to a game of shuffleboard if you want to lose. Did you get that? So, next time you're in downtown Long Beach on Pine Avenue, make sure you stop by Anna's Joint on the 400 block. Not only do they have Anna's Joint, this restaurant and bar, but they also have the amazing deli next door, and then next door to that, they have a very exotic flower shop. You may want to stop by and say hi.
Tremendous amount of energy, man.
Oh, yes. And we are back, you guys. And shout out to Troy Lawrence, who says, open the damn market. Goofy tax hounds, he says. Thank you for that super chat, Troy. We appreciate it.
All right. Well,
Jenny.
coming up next, we have an expert on cannabis analytics, cultivation, and manufacturing, founder of Bell Costa Labs, and currently fighting for his life like a lot of us from the DCC, Nate Winokur.
Thank you so much, Jenny Beth, for the introduction. And hello, everybody. And I wanted to bring a story to you today all about cannabis and its presence in education, specifically medicine. Titled "Lack of Cannabis Education Leaves Future Prescribers Without a I have a cat right here that's absolutely attacking my attention. Lack of cannabis education leaves future prescribers with a missing tool. At last count, 48 U.S. states, Washington, D.C., and 3 territories have legalized cannabis for medical therapeutic purposes and 24 for adult recreational use. In 2020, at least 8.3 million Americans acknowledged using medical cannabis. Many of the same patients also reported mixed, i.e. medicinal recreational use. Clinical education has not caught up. There are 19 cannabis education certificate and or master levels programs offered in colleges, universities, and graduate schools in 14 U.S. states, meaning that only about 1/3 of the 48 states that have legalized medicinal cannabis have some sort of college or graduate level curriculum to support patients. The dearth of cannabis education has also left a large percentage of the more than 1 million practicing physicians in the U.S. and concurrently most future prescribers without a framework to leverage what has the potential to become one of the most important tools at their disposal. Leah Sarah, PhD, is associate professor and the inaugural program director of the nation's first Master of Science in Medical Cannabis Science and Therapeutics program at the University of Maryland School of Pharmacy in Baltimore. Sarah explained the impetus behind UMD's program, which launched in August 2019. Was the concerns voiced by health professionals. Not only were they not learning about cannabis medicine and the endocannabinoid system in academic programs, but more importantly, they lacked the knowledge to help patients coming to them with questions. I think that it's important for health professionals I think that it's important for health professional educational programs to incorporate cannabis medicine into their curricula so that when we graduate new generations of healthcare providers, they're better equipped to really engage with a public who clearly wants more information, both to keep them safe and help improve their lives, she said. Medical literature has underscored that medical students feel the same. 2019 survey of medical school students indicated that although participants expressed mixed feelings about medicinal cannabis, the majority said they lacked adequate knowledge about its therapeutic applications, research, and science, and instead relied on anecdotal evidence and social media for information. Good old bro science and comments. The endocannabinoid system, that's the system that allows our bodies to interact with cannabis. The endocannabinoid system, arguably. Politics have played a large role in slowing broad acceptance of the medicinal benefits of cannabis, ergo fear-mongering, the war on drugs, and so forth, and it is still considered a Schedule I drug. These factors are also believed to have contributed to the lack of inclusion in medical school curriculum. What it means for cannabis to be a Schedule I substance is that the federal government says that cannabis does not have a currently accepted medical use and the highest risk of abuse, said Sarah. Although there's been a lot of cannabis research both within and outside the U.S., it's very difficult to do gold standard randomized controlled trials with any Schedule I drug. Until very recently, and it may be occurring still, a lot of medical and nursing programs taught that cannabis is bad, has no therapeutic benefits, and it's highly addictive, added Nishi Waitley, co-founder and chief operating officer of Credo Science, a science and research organization geared towards education, cannabis product optimization, and clinical consultation. There's been an active campaign to malign cannabis, which is an enormous disservice to the patient and to the medical professional who needs to have more tools in their toolbox, she said. Despite these challenges, decades of scientific research have consistently shown that the endocannabinoid system helps modulate a wide range of physiologic processes, ergo pain, inflammation, mood, metabolism, and neuroprotection through its interaction with the major systems in the body, including nervous, immune, and endocrine systems and digestive system symptoms. There is a key reason why cannabis researchers and specialists have argued for its inclusion within medical education programs. Every place we've looked, in whatever physiological system, the endocannabinoid system has a role as a homeostatic regulator, said Ethan Russo, MD. That guy's a badass. A board-certified neurologist, psychopharmacology researcher, and co-founder CEO of Credo Science. We now understand that there are endogenous cannabinoids that are similar in structure to what we see in cannabis, said Reggie Gaudino, PhD, a molecular geneticist and director of the Cannabis Research Institute at the University of Illinois, Chicago. The endocannabinoid system is like the one ring to rule them all, he said. It interacts through all other biochemical pathways and systems in the body to help keep our different processes in balance. Without understanding that system, we create other problems, which is a great point. And just the basics. These cannabis experts said that at the very least, practicing and future prescribers need a foundational education that might include an overview of the endocannabinoid system, how it applies to disease processes, and its major components. The endocannabinoid system is a good starting point. It's how we're used to learning about medications and how biological systems are altered from disease or medication or other treatments, said Sarah. She explained that this provides a foundation for discussions about the pharmacology of cannabinoids, chemicals within the cannabis plant that have biologic activity in humans and other animals, and how they interact with the endocannabinoid system to produce downstream effects on other organs. Sarah also said that it's important for future prescribers to learn how to interpret different types of medical literature and cannabis studies despite methodological concerns that have plagued the industry and the lack of studies on scientific products available in medical dispensaries. The same is true for counteracting cannabis hysteria in mainstream media every time a new study comes out, said Russo. Medical students need to be aware that real issues can arise with cannabis and its potential abuse, which does happen, he explained. But the other side of the coin is therapeutics, which is quite distinct in terms of intent and dosages, i.e., there's a distinction between a small dose for therapeutic purposes and a large dose that may produce harm. Importantly, this fact has often been overlooked in alarmist headlines and stories that have gained the most traction. One last part. Today, the gap between educational needs and educational reality is large. To address this, Russo and Whiteley said they developed an online 40-hour advanced medical cannabis certificate program for practicing clinicians. For professionals interested in learning how to address patient questions in an informed manner, they also created Foundations of Cannabis Therapeutics course. Though future prescribers can certainly benefit from these sorts of online foundational courses, the dearth of cannabis education within medical schools has left a large knowledge and practice deficit. And we can go on and on and on. I think it will help hammer in the same points that will be made. Everybody, I'd love to hear what you think of. I think in some ways, when it comes to some knowledge, this is sort of bringing sand to the beach for this group. I think it's all pretty obvious that this needs to exist in a bigger way. I think that it creates a lot of damage not having this, and so many people are misinformed, and obviously it's so weird to just witness this campaign against cannabis from just another, seemingly abstract angle. I've said for years, though, that I think this needs to be a part of what everybody should be learning, and I'd love to know what you guys have been saying for years as well.
Man, oh man, look at that, bro. I mean, the doctors have even said this multiple times on the show as well, Nate, as far as the lack of education that doctors are taught when it comes with when it comes with cannabis and whatnot too. So I totally agree that there's a big gap in the education. I think only like 10% of the doctors are taught about the endocannabinoid system in the first place, and there's just such a and there's so much misinformation out there at the same time too, that even if they were taught about it, I'm sure that they're probably get the wrong facts included to think that they are facts.
Well, this goes back to the change in medical schools at the end of the 1800s, where they tried to standardize all the education and what it takes to get in, and then they made it pharmaceutical based. There were a lot of efforts put into making physicians toe the line. Okay. And what we're seeing today is, as soon as the Controlled Substances Act was passed, the DEA made concerted efforts to not allow meaningful research into the positive qualities of this plant. It was all negative. If you ever said anything positive, you never got another grant dollar. One of the reasons they went after Molly and I, and especially Molly, is they wanted to throw a physician in prison to make a point that if you go outside of what we tell you to do, we're going to kick the shit out of you. Okay. And it worked. It did. But the problem they have now is that in some studies, up to 30% of the patient population is using cannabis. So if you have that many people that are out there using it, and you come to a physician and you can't even have a discussion about it, meaningful discussion with your physician, because they really don't know what the hell he's talking about. Now we have this void, and it's getting filled by bud tenders who may or may not know what the fuck they're talking about.
They don't. People
who like weed and they just, this worked for me, this is how it's got to work. No, this needs to come from an informed place. Science is out there. The endocannabinoid system is not well known, but it's known enough to teach it to a physician. And then the therapeutics are also well known enough for physicians to have a basic understanding. If somebody comes to you with a certain condition and they're going, I'm frustrated, I got this effect, that you could talk with them meaningfully about introducing cannabinoids into their therapeutic regimen, and then following them, teaching them how to titrate it, what that means. I mean, there's a lot of this that's just basic information. And for Molly and I, we got started, we'd been smoking weed for years, so we knew about cannabis. But when it comes to, educating people about the realities, the biological and the medical realities of it, there just wasn't enough information. And when I looked around and talked to people, you find that 3/4 of them are just full of shit. They have no fucking idea what they're talking about. And that doesn't help at all. Because if you have a kid who, and we had a lot of these, to bring a kid in. Well, what do? They're taking all these medicines. And we had to start with start low, go slow, report back to us. And we had to learn along with the parents about this. That information should be readily available. They have this thing called the PDR, the Physician's Desk Reference. And they used to have one of these for herbs. And we pulled it up and took a look at it. And if you pulled up a drug that was legal, there were just pages of information about diagnostic criteria, what to expect, the side effects. You pulled up the herbal thing, there was a couple paragraphs, which was anecdotal shit that you might get from High Times magazine. It needs to come into the 21st century. But why isn't it coming into the 21st century? We still have prohibitionists that have control over medicine. It's that simple. And, I said this before, physicians are not fighters. Okay. They're left brain thinkers. We got maps. I follow rules. If someone barks at me, I don't want to buck the system. I call them pusillanimous. They're a bunch of fucking pussies. Okay? Because you got to be able to look somebody in the eye and say, hey, my patient tells me this works. Okay. And if you, as the administrator of some, the VA or whatever, tell me I can't talk about this, why? Okay? And you need to push inside the systems. Physicians need to demand this too. As much as we're in the outside, the physician community needs to get to the medical schools and say, hey, we demand that you put this into neurophysiology. That's where it starts. That's where the endocannabinoid system's taught. They talk about the endo-opioid system all the time. Same goddamn thing. Okay? The pharmacologists come in and tell you how we alter these molecules so that we get them into the bloodstream so that the most maximum therapeutic molecule we can make. That all takes place regularly. But when it comes to cannabis, a physician would get more information watching our show than they would to go to a neurophysiology class where the professor doesn't know shit from Shinola about this. And maybe he read something on YouTube and they're trying to teach this. No, this needs concerted effort because it ain't going away. Numbers are going to stabilize somewhere around the amount of people who use alcohol. And they teach you a lot about alcohol in medical school because you're going to run into a lot of people who are using it and who are abusing it. And you better have some idea what the hell you're talking about when you're dealing with someone using these substances. It's not there. It's a shame because it continues the prohibitionist justification. And if every physician knew about this and they were teaching their patients, and there would be a lot more push from the outside to get this thing changed.
Fair enough. Joe, any thoughts on this before we move on?
Well, like I said, I worked with doctors for over 10 years. Essentially, they're merchants, and I think asking a doctor for health advice is it's like asking the waiter to choose the wine. I think that their job is to get you through their revolving door. And a great way to do that is to put you on a prescription medication so they can get you back 3 more times. And I think that it's all a racket and a business. I think that there are certain things that you should go to the doctor for, but I think you're ultimately responsible for your own health and doing your own research because most of them are morons like everybody else.
Fair enough. And on that, we're going to roll into our final commercial and we are going to be right back.
Oh man, your knees still bothering you, man?
Yeah, my left one, And I'll tell you what, I've been using this new CBD cream, and it works like a miracle.
CBDs? I done heard about them CBDs. I was out there on them Twitters the other day, and I heard they get you high as a kite.
Well, not this stuff. This stuff is tested. Every batch, all the way through, pharmaceutical grade. And in a GMP certified facility, so you're not going to have to worry about flying high.
GMP certified? I might have to try some of this out. Where am I even find this?
You go directly to aimhighhemp.com and they will ship it to your door right away. Tested. It's not a name, it's a promise.
And we are back, you guys. Coming up next is the newest member of the High 9 team. It is Mr. AJ. He's an ass, and he loves Joe and is Joe, and he is the creator of none other than Mr. Sour Diesel himself. It is AJ Sour Diesel.
Hey, thanks for the intro. Every time someone says he is the creator of Sour Diesel, I get so much shit, all right? Like,
Yeah, that's good.
I'm not the creator. I'm just
Whatever.
the fool that was standing around at the right place at the right time. Yeah. Oh, shit. Give me 2 seconds. My battery's about to die. Let me
Oh,
plug in.
shit. Jeez Louise. Oh, man. Of course, Joe. Of course. You know what I mean? Of course. Well, maybe
sometimes you just gotta go.
Yeah, you know. Well, no, his battery's getting ready to die. He has to plug his battery in.
All right, this is amateur night.
Yeah,
I like the representation of being in New York and looking at an apple, and that seems weirdly appropriate.
A big apple too.
It's a big
Huge.
apple. So
Jason would say huge.
So today I've decided to go over this Texas THC ban. It was reported in the Texas Tribune. THC-related poison control calls tripled in Texas after hemp became legal. Experts say there's more to the story. Experts say poison control data don't specify which calls are related to hemp versus more dangerous K2, but show that most THC poisonings cause minor side effects. Texas lawmakers across the political spectrum have thrown around various claims about the dangers of hemp-derived THC to children, emphasizing its proliferation was a life and death matter that necessitated a ban on the intoxicating chemical. When you look at the data, Texas Poison Control Center reported a 495% increase in marijuana-related calls involving children age 5 and under from 2017 to 2022. Said Senator Cesar Blanco, Democrat of El Paso, earlier this year as the Senate debated a bill that would have banned THC products. Many of us are parents. As a father, I can't ignore that, and as a body, I don't think we should ignore it. Data provided from the Texas Poison Control Center network confirm a sharp increase in marijuana-related calls starting in 2019, a year after hemp-derived THC was legalized by the federal government, from 923 to 2,592 calls in 2024. Of the 11,134 cumulative marijuana-related calls to poison centers from 2011 to 2021, which is the years made available on the dashboard for symptoms, those involving children under the age of 5 make up the largest group, 3,086, followed by teenagers at 2,495. Drug policy experts say that while these numbers seem alarming, it is natural for poisoning calls to increase when a drug has become legalized, and that the data needs additional context before it's used to prove a need for a ban. They point to other statistics that show that unintentional poisoning calls among children have been increasing for years across the nation. An important part of this data is the effects and outcomes of these poison control calls, because the number rising isn't a bad thing. People feel free and more confident to call poison control because they don't feel like they will be arrested, said Heather Fazio, director of the Texas Cannabis Policy Center, a nonprofit policy organization that advocates for cannabis reforms. Texas Poison Control public dashboards reflect the cannabinoids, opioids, youth suicides, and carbon monoxide poisonings, and an annual report in 2024 by the organization found that children under the age of 6 accounted for almost half of all calls, with cleaning products and painkillers as the leading substances. As the Texas legislature reconvenes this week to consider regulating THC or propose banning it again, among other pressing matters, drug policy experts say that the fact the youngest of children make up the largest segment of THC poison control calls suggests a need for parent education about securing the products in their homes and how to talk to their kids about the dangers of THC to their developing bodies. Not necessarily a ban. I think it's safe to say these toddlers aren't walking into gas stations, said Catherine Neal Harris, drug policy expert for the Baker Institute. What these numbers show is an issue of improper storage at home, which is different than young adults buying things without age restriction. What the data says about risks: Texans for Safe and Drug-Free Youth and Sheriff's Association of Texas used poison control data to encourage the passage of a bill that would have banned THC products during this year's regular legislative session. Although Governor Greg Abbott eventually vetoed the bill, lawmakers spent months listening to stories of children harmed by the drug. I could go on and on, but, I think we get it. It's, Texas is a very conservative state, and it's going to be a long time before they can accept cannabis as a civilized practice.
Fair.
Well, the problem is that cannabis isn't a poison. That's the first place where we need to start these discussions. And the theoretical LD50, or the lethal dose for half the population, is 3/4 of a ton consumed in 15 minutes. In other words, it's not fucking possible. Okay. You cannot consume enough cannabis to kill you. With all the other drugs they list on the poison control list, we use them. If they're going to be consumed, we give you small doses, therapeutic, not poisonous doses. And that's the range that they're trying to be concerned about. Cannabis doesn't fit that model. And I worked in an ER for years, over 5 years. We had kids come in that died from eating Tylenol. They came in and they got a hold of bleach or some bullshit like that. And they were really they're not going to live. And we'd have a parent come in, they're all sweaty. Oh, my kid got a hold of this. And, the kid's actually unconscious, okay, because cannabis at high doses will do that to you. But, we'd walk out of the room, we'd reassure the parents, go out in the hallway and talk, what the fuck? Let's just watch this kid. Keep the brownies away from them because it's not going to hurt them. Kids aren't driving, okay? And I like to remind people that back in the 1830s and 40s, when cannabis was reintroduced into medicine, they would consciously give kids a dose that would knock them out, okay? No one was concerned about that because you just couldn't die from it. So using the term poison is a way to continue the hysteria. Because you need is education for parents. First of all, you dumbass, keep the stuff away from your kids. They shouldn't be having access to this. And I can tell you, my own family, my dumbass son left some homemade, treats around, and my little granddaughters got hold of them. They got fucked up. And I got kind of pissed off at him for being so stupid to leave it around. They weren't going to die. We need to educate parents like we've educated them about alcohol. If your kid gets a hold of your whiskey and takes a couple shots, you don't run to the emergency room and say, oh, my kid got, let them puke it out, and you learn how to handle this stuff within your own home. Okay, now, if you don't know what they took, that's a whole different kettle of fish. Maybe you need to get some medical intervention. But the hysteria of calling, the poison control people saying, these kids show up, that's a parent problem. Kids are going to be fine. Okay, well, it's the parents that are dumbasses and don't know what to do with a kid. Got a hold of a gummy and shouldn't have eaten it.
Yeah.
Well, and here's the tough part too, is while cannabis is not, something that's going to be toxic to a child, some of these synthetic cannabinoids that are being produced and the shit that we frankly don't know what the hell they've ingested is. And that's a symptom of Texas's failure to regulate cannabis so that it's not a synthetic, because nobody's going to go smoke spice if they can go smoke a joint, right? So I think that they need to realize that they're dealing with this in a very ass-backwards way. And I'm going to be very honest, I haven't paid a whole lot of attention down there just because I continue to get annoyed because it's like you guys are throwing so many pieces of spaghetti at the wall that nothing's going to stick. So, when you find a way to...
Sorry to interrupt. I don't think that they're necessarily doing it backwards. I think that Texas has a huge population and will probably eventually become the third largest consumer of cannabis in the country. And I think that it's more about watching how other states play out in order to ensure that, big business is able to seize control of the market there.
No, I definitely understand that. I just think that I do think in some ways they're doing it ass backwards. I truly do. I do believe that as opposed to saying, hey, okay, let's look at how some of these states that are already doing this are doing it. And yes, in some ways they are. They're like, oh, well, we're Texas and we're going to show you guys how the fuck to do this. And I don't think that when you have such a huge opposition that maybe that's the best way to push things through. Go look and say, hey, look, kids aren't dying over here from eating spice. Kids aren't, getting sick over here from K2 or whatever it might be. And look at the anecdotal evidence from states that are doing it right. Not everybody has it perfect. No one has it totally perfect. Colorado's a great example. California's a great example of mature markets that have stabilized, that have grown up, and that have, drastically reduced numbers of children using these things. So if you're going to push through protect the fucking kids, then look at the places that are protecting the kids and doing a good job of it and present that evidence.
Interesting.
Well, that assumes they want to do it right. This is caught up in politics, which doesn't make logical sense. And that's what you're dealing with.
You're right.
Come at them objectively, go, oh, this is that. And you go, yeah, but my mom has said it's bad, so fuck you, I'm not going to do it. Or I've been lobbied not to do this. The pharmaceutical industry lobbied me. There's a lot of reasons why. Like I said, we're asking you to build us a horse and you build us a goddamn giraffe. None of it works because politics is involved. And politics is not, doesn't make sense. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and ultimately, I'm really glad that this article ultimately touched on the ultimate problem, which is parents not being good parents and keeping their stuff out of reach of their kids. And granted, if you have adolescents, they're always going to snoop around stuff and look for whatever. But to me, it sounds like more the problem is these younger kids. You know what I mean? 5, 6, 7 that are just, happen to see something on the countertop and are eating it because that's what kids do is they put things in their mouth constantly, and that's the kind of the name of the game. And so
pay attention to what your kids are doing.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I'm saying?
Seems pretty straightforward. There's 2 little anecdotes, if you guys don't mind, that I'd like to share. One, in my last couple dozen years that I've been in cannabis, I've had a chance to work at a few head shops just in between jobs. And I did happen to work at when that spice stuff came out, nobody knew what the fuck it was. I was working at a head shop then, and I saw people come in for it. And, I've been smoking for, 2/3 of my life, and I'm more than used to cannabis. I did see within a matter of months that the spice, those synthetic cannabinoids, absolutely wreck people, insanely. It was crazy to see how much that disrupted the proper function of the endocannabinoid system, and how you could see that expressed through these people, their behavior, how they looked, their fucking skin color. It was crazy. It's funny enough, it's fortunately we stopped selling it pretty quickly as soon as, some of the stuff started to come to light. But there were some people who became addicted to it. Maybe it was because they didn't have any other options, which is its own thing. But I saw some people just become zombies that couldn't get away from this stuff. Almost weird at the end of the day that it was associated with cannabis. That was one thing. The other is, and I think a lot of people here listening, and and not to say you're completely immune from it as a parent, but as being a parent, and to Jenny Beth's point, where watch your kids, and having edibles around, just as like we have bottles of liquor and things like that. My kid doesn't get into it. Kids that visit don't get into it. We watch them. We're on top of our shit. We teach the kids about what they're around. This brings the idea of kids being careless or adults treating it carelessly around these adult substances. It brings it down to near zero. And of course, flukes can happen. Dale, sorry to hear about that a little bit. But generally spoken, you guys had a framework where this wasn't a common occurrence. And when we see this actually impacting people on these levels to where, that's actually become a thing, people are talking about it and reporting it. It's almost mind blowing, because this seems like something that ought to be pretty well controlled. It's interesting. It's a part of the culture that I'm not familiar with, but generally spoken, people who I know and everybody who's around their kids is all wildly responsible with cannabis, alcohol, and anything else that they might be around. Well, why wouldn't you be?
Yeah, fair enough. And on that, we're going to keep this train rolling. I'm going to roll into our final story of the day today. And Nate, I told you I had this one. This one is for you, buddy, because a Tucson man runs a dispensary and his wife tests its marijuana that's illegal in Arizona, you guys. That's right. Arizona's health agency fined a marijuana testing lab $120,000 after allegations of unlawful nepotism and shady scientific methods that could have exposed customers to contaminants. The State Department of Health and Human Services levied the fine quietly on June 30th without a news release, demanding Tucson's Full Spectrum Lab pay the first installment of $10,000 by July 31st. The fine appears to be strictly related to the state's finding documented in a May 13th letter of nepotism, and online state documents show a May 20th inspection of the lab conducted one day after the state sent another notice threatening to revoke the lab's license turned up problems that could lead to further sanctions. The health agency told Full Spectrum in a June 30th consent agreement obtained by the Arizona Republic that the case would be dropped if it paid the fine in 1 year and completed a corrective plan. And officials declined to say how the agreement solves the nepotism problem, which the state had previously told the company could not be easily fixed. The principals of Full Spectrum, whose names are withheld from the consent agreement, would face a renewed possibility of having its license revoked. And the 6-digit fine comes as insiders complain of large-scale corruption in the industry in Arizona and other states that puts consumers at risk of getting sick from pesticides and other contaminants known to be harmful, or getting ripped off by inflated THC potency results. The owners of Full Spectrum, one of 2 marijuana testing labs the health agency hit with statements of deficiency earlier this year, aren't talking, and a man who answered the phone at the facility hung up twice on the Republic. The fine appears to be one of the largest the state has levied against a testing company in recent years, and the health agency penalized On Point Labs of Snowflake with a $470,000 fine in 2022, which was the last 6-digit fine publicly reported. The company later closed and sold its equipment to Scottsdale Apollo Labs, and it does not appear the state has taken action yet against the firm for its lab violations against the second facility targeted for enforcement earlier this year. Kacha Labs, which is part of a Florida-based chain, the state accuses Kacha Labs Arizona branch of poor practices that resulted in inaccurate sample results for potency and contaminants, and referred the case to its enforcement team for assessment of civil monetary penalties. Labs has multifaceted problems, the state says, and in its May 13th letter, the State Department of Health Services accused Full Spectrum of intentionally flouting the state's cannabis testing anti-nepotism law, hurting the firm's trustworthiness. And according to the state, the lab's technical director is the son of the chief financial officer for a Tucson dispensary, the lab's biggest client, and the law disallows such a relationship to keep the testing labs independent of their customers. Sam Levenberg, the chief financial officer for Downtown Dispensary in Tucson, formed Full Spectrum Lab in October of 2020, and state cooperation records show his wife, Susan Bolzoni Levenberg, is the company's president. His son, Simon Levenberg, is the vice president of the lab's operations, while his daughter, Claire Levenberg, is Downtown Dispensary's director of product development. The state told the company the infraction was intentional and not correctable with a reasonable period of time, and the letter also said the violations cast doubt on the firm's testing results. A month later, in June 30th, the state released a statement of deficiency on the state-run azcarecheck.com, showing a series of alleged lab violations found in the May 20th inspection, including some that were repeats of previous year's findings. The lab didn't perform required quality control testing and complete mandatory paperwork, or use appropriate units of measurement in some tests. It didn't ensure that analytical data generated by the laboratory was scientifically defensible and valid, in violation of the state rules. The highly technical technical statement said, and the problems affected testing for both contaminants and potency. Among the violations, the state also mentioned in a 2024 finding, Full Spectrum didn't perform valid quality control checks and resulting in poor results for tests of the pesticide malathion. Testing law in 2020 has limits, and Arizona's voters first legalized marijuana with a medical marijuana program back in 2010, and an adult use marijuana law followed in 2020 that allows people 21 and older to possess and buy personal amounts of marijuana and cannabis products. Yet before a separate marijuana testing law took effect in 2020, dispensaries had no responsibility to test their products for potency and things that could make people ill, like heavy metals, pesticides, and mold. And the state of Arizona doesn't test marijuana and cannabis products, and similar to most other marijuana-friendly states, instead the state leaves that up to laboratories that are supposed to be fully independent from dispensaries. The system has inherent problems, though, and critics have blasted the state's oversight as too lax. In 2022, the Republic found higher than allowed levels of pesticides in products purchased at a dispensary that had already cleared the testing process, and a lab that consistently inflated its potency results. Former and current insiders say labs may intentionally skew their results to stay on good terms with their customers and the dispensaries, which can shop for another lab if they don't like the results they see. And advocates for a better testing regime helped introduce legislation in 2022, and they said could help solve some of the problems, but it didn't pass. And state hides certain info on labs because the 2020 testing law created the Arizona Medical Marijuana Testing Advisory Council to oversee the testing industry and report the number of deficiencies found in the lab's work. On the legislature, the law requires the names of the testing labs to be stricken from the record in its report, and recent information about existing dispensaries and marijuana testing companies can be found on azcarecheck.com for those who know where to look for such information, but certain kinds of information aren't posted. Of the 11 state-certified marijuana testing labs, all were found to have at least some statements of deficiency for incomplete paperwork or lab work that missed a step or utilized inappropriate methods, most of which were easy fixables with corrective action plans. And 6 of the 11, meanwhile, had more serious problems in the past 3 years that led to referral of the health agency's enforcement team for civil monetary penalties. Enforcement orders are shown on the site for just 2 of the 11 Full Spectrum and Black Labs LLC in Tucson, which was fined $3,500 on June 30th of 2025, following a November inspection in which the state found problems with the company's testing methods, security, paperwork, and other activities, including some repeat findings. The other 9 that have no enforcement orders on the site include Kaicha Labs, which, besides the enforcement referral this year, was also referred for enforcement and monetary penalties after inspection in the previous 2 years. And the state has certified a total of 27 labs since the 2020 law went into effect, and most of which are out of business, but no information can be found on the state site about any state enforcement on the 16 companies that are no longer certified. Besides the closed labs, state officials won't say whether the state is not logging existing currently certified labs that were referred for enforcement and fines, or that those referrals don't lead to fines. And the agency has not yet released public records submitted by the Republic in March for all fines levied against any lab since 2023. And officials asked the Republic to submit another request for Full Spectrum's corrective action plan, and in a quote says, "I find it particularly troubling that one lab is getting hit with penalties and the public isn't able to get a good look at that," said Joe Domena, a lobbyist who serves on the advisory council as a registered medical marijuana patient. Well, you guys, things are going down in AZ, and I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about this.
I can't believe how fucking ballsy that was.
Yeah. Right?
Come on, that's not nepotism. That's a family business, you guys. Come on, right?
Yeah, could you imagine like the family dinners? Just put it there. Like how many different codes have been broken right there to where even like anybody looking at that would be like, yeah, like you're fucking around. You're going to find out.
Yeah, right.
That and I've got to say, out of all of the different cases I've read, out of all of the different things that I've been privy to, the newest and funniest one by far is using the wrong units of measurement. Like, what the fuck? Like, that's the science equivalent of forgetting to carry the one. Like, what the fuck, guys? Like, that's, I don't know. I don't know if you saw me, but I lost it at that part. That was insanely funny to me.
Yeah. And we did get a super chat in from Miss Leah Patrick, who says, pray for Texas patients, businesses, and the disabled. Love y'all and much gratitude. Deschedule and decriminalize home grow for all. Yeah, I'm not mad at that.
Well, it seems pretty obvious that their governmental oversight agencies, about as good as our DCC is in California here, slow and ineffective. And I'm not a big fan of, criminal penalties for people. For God's sakes, if the rules say you can't do this and you fucking do it and things get out in the marketplace that are harmful to people, maybe you should wear an orange suit and eat with a spork for a few months to get the word across to you that this isn't just an economic issue, you dumbass. This has bigger implications, public health, and nepotism's just a nice word for talking about a crime family.
Yeah.
This is a fucking crime family here. You're told not to do something. And most scientists I know are left brain thinkers. They like to follow rules. It's like Nate says, if your SOPs say you do certain things, you're not following them. Why are you doing this?
Yeah. Yeah, that literally breaks the whole idea of, in our world, what ISO is. Like, an ISO compliance takes away the idea of, well, that just seemed like the best idea, or no, I wasn't trained in this. This just, somebody told me to get it done, so I just got it done. Like, no, like, not allowable. And so it's crazy when you see, like, because part of ISO, like, it includes like review and helping to appreciate the local laws and what you have to do there and helping you stay compliant. Like, that's part of what your ISO review committee or accreditor will give you. And so it's fucking mind-blowing from so many different directions. That and the rampant opportunities I've seen outside of my lab, of course. I've seen so many ways of breaking the law in just weird, fucked up little ways that that's not in. When I heard of these, like CCTL last year, when they got shut down, one of the things that was actually on the review that I had a chance to read is that they were falsifying the amount of moisture in the product because you're allowed to offset the amount of THC. Sorry, I got a industrial thing going on outside, and I'm back. So you're allowed to essentially adjust the amount of THC when you have the opportunity to falsify the moisture, which is a fuck all thing. Like, anybody can do that. It's a reason why you actually want a lab who's committed to doing things accurately, because there's so many little weird ways you can mess with the dilutions. Literally, if to the point where if you're supposed to dilute something by 20 milliliters, but instead you dilute it by 19, well, now 5% of that relative amount just got increased chemically. Right? Like, this is something that somebody can whisper to a lab tech. Again, there's so many opportunities to falsify that you just simply need to trust a lab, or you're going for the fuck all approach, which has a lot to do with the regulations that I'm sure say if you have your hands in a lab, this exists almost everywhere in every regulated state. If you have your hands in a lab, you're not allowed to have your hands in any other kind of business. And vice versa. If you have any other kind of business, if you're a manufacturer or seller or producer or grower of goods, you cannot have a laboratory, because the opportunities for conflict of interest are so stupidly obvious, right? Like, you don't even have to use your imagination. You can just I mean, I could give you 101 things I've seen and people try to pull, and this goes back for so long. Even last week's story where we identified that how absolutely fucking stupid it is that Canadian flower companies are able to actually curate and send in their own bud that gets to represent the rest of the batch. Not how cannabis works.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you don't send in the juiciest orange and say, well, this is the whole orchard produced this exact level of juiciness. That's not how oranges work. That's not how cannabis works.
Mm-hmm.
And so proper representation that goes right down to the core of educating people what things are gets totally fucked off in these situations. And sorry, I'm so incensed by it, but this makes an absolute mockery of what I've built my livelihood around. So yeah, what do you say?
Mm-hmm. Man, it's just it's just not surprising in this space. It's like nothing surprises me anymore in the limits that people will go to try to get one over on the system, and try to make sure that they're having that upper wedge advantage.
Especially when the reasons why we like cannabis and why so many of us have been drawn to it has nothing to do with these skewed numbers.
Exactly.
If anything, skewing numbers creates a singularity where people go away from the kind of shit that we tend to like and enjoy, and all of that variety of cannabis, including the low THC producers. Once you give it up to the people who don't know what the fuck they're doing, they just create these singularities, and all of a sudden, just like I said last week, the guy left saying, what the fuck happened to my Bubba Kush? Oh yeah, it's 12%.
Yeah, fair enough.
And good.
Yeah,
and it's the best weed I ever smoked.
Anyone else have any other final comments before we close out?
You had one job, Jason, which was to find a happy story to end the show, and you know what?
What?
You didn't do it.
Whatever.
ATX.
Get over yourself today. Thank you all for joining us and getting high at 9 with us every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific and high noon on the East Coast. And big shout out to our audience and supporters for tuning in daily and listening to the insanity that is the developing cannabis industry. Huge thank you to Aim High Hemp Distribution, Tested, and Catalyst for helping us keep the lights on over here. And thank you to our correspondents for being absolutely amazing. Thank you to Cannabis Sativa L for giving us a reason to do this every day. And thank you to Cloud Media partners Elias and Kai somewhere in the metaverse. And thank you all for tuning in and getting high at 9 with us. We are America's #1 daily cannabis news show.